Welcome to the Warships Podcast with your host, Kellorn, Venicera, and Arun.
Hello, and welcome to episode 135 of the Warships Podcast. I'm your host, Kellorn, and Venicera and Arun are here with me today as we have more World Warships to talk about. First up, we have a few ships on the PTS that we've been able to preview in port and just look at their stats. They are the Tier 10 Japanese destroyer Hayate, the Tier 10 British battleship Thunderer, which is the joke ship that Little White Mouse make up that is now a reality, the Tier 9 Pan-European destroyer Friesland, the British Tier 6 carrier Ark Royal, and the German Tier 9 cruiser Seigfried. Since we're not allowed to play any of these ships, we just look at them in port. I'm mostly going to hold off on talking about them, but I have one exception. Seigfried. The Tier 9 cruiser Seigfried is based on the German O-class battlecruiser designs and is outwardly very similar to the tech tree Tier 7 battleship Gneisenau, which is honestly one of the better Tier 7 battleships out there in my opinion. That said, there are some pretty important differences. Seigfried has marginally higher top speed, lower gun dispersion, and quad torp launchers instead of triples. She also has slightly more hit points than the Tier 7 battleship, at least right now. That's one of the things that often gets adjusted on these cruisers, so I'm not going to hold that one as steady as the other ones. The problem is that her armor is nowhere near Gneisenau's. Both have a turtleback armor scheme, but Seigfried's outer belt armor is 190 millimeters, where Gneisenau has 320. Compare this to the 100 millimeter belt on Hindenburg, and we end up almost exactly in the middle. Now, this may work out for Seigfried, but honestly, I just don't know how this turtleback armor scheme with like a mid-level armor plate is going to work out. Sometimes Hindenburg takes a lot of damage, sometimes it doesn't. Hindenburg certainly can be a citadel when most of the battleships can't. So it's really one of those things we don't know if it's going to be enough to make it act like a German battleship or if it's going to act like Hindenburg when it gets hit by some of the larger shells. So this being the case, I have a lot of reservations on how this Tier 9 supercruiser with 380 millimeter guns is going to play out.
Unless I've missed something on the ship, I don't think she's going to perform very well, at least not at the start. She'll be okay, I think, because she's a supercruiser and cruisers can play a play style where you don't get hit that much, but I don't think she's going to be a massive powerhouse unless those guns are somehow magically insane. Because
the guns, they have 198 meter horizontal dispersion, everyone. So, and that's better than the 256 that you see on Gneisenau with the same range. So I feel like they're going to have a tighter dispersion, but they're still only 15-inch guns. Now, we're still looking at a 26-second reload. So it's like one of those things that I think this is neither, fish nor, fowl,
Yeah, I get it. I meant more like in terms of penetration power. But what I'm trying to say is that unless she gets something that, I haven't considered, I don't think she's going to be that great. She's, again, going to be okay because cruisers don't have to get hit that much. But she won't play like Gneisenau does, purely because Gneisenau is a Tier 7 ship, meaning that many ships that she faces are from like Tier 5 to Tier 9, especially the lower tier ones or the ones at her tier have a lot more difficulty fighting her than, the ships at Tier 10 and 9 are going to have against the Seigfried. So I think because of that, she isn't going to play like Gneisenau. And I'm kind of afraid of a cruiser I'm afraid of playing a cruiser that pretends to be a battleship but isn't.
Vanessa, I know that the German battleships are some of your more favorite ships to play in the game. What do you think when you look at this ship, the O-class?
I kind of see an odd duck here, but I mean, just have to test it, and I'm gonna really reserve judgment until I can get the ship out there in the game and just see how it handles, how it take hits, and what you can and can't do with it. I mean, obviously, it's going to be at a tier where you really get punished when you make mistakes, more so than the middle tiers, especially Tier 7, where if you are facing 9s, you can seriously get punished. But I mean, at Tier 10, it's definitely night and day difference from those middle tiers. So the play style should be different. The outcome, I believe will also be different just because, again, you've got 15-inch guns, that you're going to be seeing a lot of tier 10 with, and it's just not going to have the same effect. It's going to be like Bismarck and Tirpitz. Though you can still make those ships work. It's just you really have to put in a lot of effort. And sometimes it can just be a bit of, a challenge.
Oh yeah, speaking of that, one thing I forgot that's related to the tier stuff. With her 380 gun, she can't overmatch the battleship she fights against, obviously, other than the tier 7s that she sometimes will run into. And so that separates her from Gneisenau quite a bit, because Gneisenau, if she fights her own tier, or both of the tiers that are lower than her, she can overmatch the bows of all the battleships. Obviously not tier 8 and 9, but 7, 6, and 5 is fine. Whereas Seigfried can only overmatch the 7s, so that's going to be something different. But I was just thinking, you know what they could do to make her unique or special? They could make her a secondary cruiser. That's what the German flavor is, right?
I actually wonder about that, because she has a pretty impressive secondary battery, and we don't have a secondary cruiser yet.
Yeah, we do. It's my Rune. My Rune's a secondary cruiser.
Yeah, that's
no,
one
not.
Cruiser. So there's a couple other interesting things. She has 8-kilometer torpedoes instead of the 6-kilometer torpedoes that we see on Tirpitz and Gneisenau, and she also has a hydro and the cruiser consumables. So she has the actual cruiser repair party that has a 60-second cooldown instead of an 80-second cooldown that the battleships have. Now, what I don't know, because I can't see it yet, is what her fire duration is. If this ship has a cruiser fire duration, I think that might make this ship a little better than we think it is right now.
That's true. But, if things don't work out, something they can always do is just make her tier 7.
Pretty much. Alrighty. Well, did you guys have any other thoughts on any of the other PTS ships before we move on?
No, not really. Just kind of, wanting to get those ships out and, sailing them, testing them.
Okie doke. Well, we have 2 ranked sprint seasons that are coming up back-to-back, starting on June 27th and July 11th. There are 10 ranks in each one. There are divisions of 2 players are allowed, and Tier 7 are the basic statistics. The first season will be on domination maps, and the next will be on the updated epicenter that we've been using in ranked this season on Tiers of the Desert. So I have a couple questions for you guys in regards to the ranked sprint system. What Tier 7 ships do you think will stand out in these ranked seasons? Because we haven't had a Tier 7 season in quite a while. And what do you think about the new epicenter mode that we've been playing with on ranked that allows you to cap each of the 3 circles individually?
Well, first, the epicenter thing. I like the fact that you can cap them individually, because it makes, people actually have to think about where they camp this time, which is sometimes nice, because your Yamato that sits at the back instead of pushing like everybody else's is sometimes useful. On the other hand, it's still epicenter, and it entails the horrors on destroyers and cruisers that the mode has always had. The DDs are still forced to go somewhere in the middle. On the bright side, though, now they don't necessarily have to always go and stay in the middle, because, they take the middle part, or the middle part is too dangerous. They might still have something to do on the outer circle, or more likely the second circle. I like that part. On the ranked sprints, I haven't really thought too much about tier 7s. That would be great. Give me some time on that.
Yeah, I haven't even touched current rank. I don't plan to. The ranked sprint, it's going to be interesting. It's been a while since we've seen tier 7. We've had a lot of new ships added to the game. I think, like Arun, have to really kind of give it a thought. I know the last time there was a 7, we still had the Sims for obvious reasons. Some people like the Belfast, but I always thought the Fiji was actually a better choice for that. There's what is in Boise, a tier 7 now? That's an interesting one. So you've got Gneisenau. We were just talking about Gneisenau. I know I liked Scharnhorst, but I think you had always talked about how the punching power just wasn't enough to knock out cruisers. So, ranked sprint is a lot different than normal ranked. So, there might be some more unconventional options that, we kind of went with in the past that where, this is what you kind of need to sail or what everyone else is going to be playing. And you might be able to get away with, whatever you feel more comfortable bringing in ranked this go around.
I actually think that Arun brought up a really interesting point. Do you take Helena or do you take Boise? And I would probably lean more towards Boise personally. But when you look at it, there are 6 USN cruisers at tier 7. 6 of them in that one tier. That's kind of crazy when you think about it.
Is it though? Like, is it actually crazy?
I don't know, but you just have so much choice. So you have Atlanta, you have New Orleans, Helena, Indianapolis, Boise, and Flint.
But listen to this. You could go with Ashigara, Haguro, Myoko, Nachi, Eastern Dragon, and Standard
Yeah, but that's
Myoko.
all the same shit.
Sure, but you have choice. You said there's 7 of them. There's how many? Is this 6? Shouldn't there actually be 2 of the special ships, or did I remember wrong? There's Southern Dragon too. So there's 7 of Ashigaras. You have your choice there as well.
Totally forgot about Flint. That would be a fun one.
So I actually want to talk about a couple of ships that have come out since we've had a tier 7 ranked season. So one of them is Lazo, which is the Soviet cruiser that isn't this the one that has the what do you call it, the
spotting aircraft?
Yeah, but is it? No, I'm thinking of the Pan Asian one that has the deep water torps. So yeah, so Lazo, this was a really weird ship to me. I don't even remember. It seems so forgettable when we played it. But you also have Irian's the one that's the totally different ship. Okay, so we have Lazo. We've got Sinop, which is the Soviet battleship that we just got, and one interesting one that I didn't remember until I was scrolling through the list here is Nelson. What do you guys think about Nelson in a tier 7 ranked season?
I'm gonna love the fact that there will be players playing the Nelson because they're always very nice to farm damage off of.
Yeah, I kind of agree, and tend to farm a lot of damage off of those, off that ship. I'm sure there's going to be some people who play them really well. But yeah, I kind of agree with Arun on that.
So the problem at tier 7 for battleships is that they have 25mm bows, and I think every single one except Scharnhorst can overmatch each other. And because of that, it means that ships that are very wide, like the Nelson, tend to be rather easy to damage. And we had the same issue last time we had 7 as a ranked season. Battleships are kind of like glass cannons at that tier. Sure, Gneisenau and Scharnhorst are going to be slightly different, but only slightly. It's very difficult to bow into a ship and then not expect massive damage. It's going to be kind of like everybody's a Yamato at tier 10. But I wanted to talk about, so I thought a little bit about what ships. And I think obviously Belfast is going to be strong. She has radar and all that. But about destroyers, I think the second best DD is going to be Leningrad, because Leningrad is fairly fast. No, she's fast. She is fairly maneuverable. She has fairly good concealment, and she packs a great punch. And she is annoying like Soviet DDs often are. But I say second best because the best one is undoubtedly going to be Z39, because that ship should be tier 8, not tier 7. It's a bullshit ship. She has 19,600. She has 19,600 life at tier 7 as a destroyer. Okay, that's fine. Fine. She also gets the tier 8 slot. She can equip concealment upgrade. She goes 36 knots, which is, isn't that special. She gets 8.5 kilometer torpedoes, so these I think are the tier 8 torpedoes. And I think she also gets hydro, right? Yeah, she should get the standard hydro, which is, the standard destroyer hydro at tier 8. Not the tier 7 one, so it's not going to be this Leberet Mas thing. It's going to be a Z23 hydro. Her one downside is that her DPM is kind of terrible, but that's going to rule the DD land for sure.
I don't disagree with you. I think Z39 is going to be strong, but the problem with Z39, in my opinion, is that it can't win destroyer fights. And how many times do you have to win a destroyer fight one-on-one in a ranked season?
Like never, because you go spot the enemy DD, then you run away and hope that you don't die.
You're apparently better at that than I am.
Well, no, what I'm trying to say is that I don't think people often talk about DD fights, but how often do you actually end up in a DD fight anywhere near the start of the game? Like when people don't, have full HPs and whatnot. What I often run into is that you make contact with DDs, and then both sides try to scramble to run away, because it's not the fact that they're going to get shot at by one another. Sure, they might be, but usually what happens is that everybody else is also going to fire on them, at which point how much damage you do or your opponent specifically does isn't nearly as important. It's much more important, what your Belfasts are doing and the Fijis and Flints and whatnot. Maybe not Fijis. Although I guess Fijis are fine too.
Yeah, on the NA server, Fiji was a really good choice. And the last time there was a ranked 7. But, just kind of echoing Arun's point, yes, oftentimes it is, who can spot the other first, which is why in many ranked seasons, the destroyer with the best stealth capabilities was often kind of the better choice, because as soon as an enemy destroyer is spotted, everyone on your team is shooting at that spotted destroyer, trying to take them out. So yeah, I mean, I remember there's one, it was quite a while ago when we had a tier 6, taking the Hatsuharu just because it had the best stealth and having extremely good success with it because of that. I think, looking at it, I think a lot of people are going to like Haida with this go around, especially how popular this ship is. I think a lot of people will be playing that as an all-around good boat. I know especially White Mouse will probably go make a point to rank out in that ship.
I would like to point out 2 ships that you guys might consider if you're playing battleships. Nagato and Ashitaka. Both of these ships, as Aaron said, that the battleships of this tier tend to be a bit of glass cannons because they overmatch each other's bows. Both of these ships can deliver a lot of damage with really high accuracy at range. So you'll see these ships kind of sitting in the back and devastating cruisers and other battleships. So if that's kind of your MO, take a look at those 2.
I wonder about that, though.
Nagato is still one of my favorite battleships in the game.
I wonder about the sitting back thing, though. That's not really my experience in ranked. Sure, people are going to sit at like 15, 16 early on, but then they seem to inch closer and closer. And with Sinop being in the pool, I think she might actually end up being very, very strong as far as
Sinop is a good ship.
Yeah.
Sinop is a really, really good ship.
Especially Baoan.
Especially Baoan, and especially because she has that 333 triple turrets that nobody else has at this tier.
Yep, extra guns, and they are 406s, so they're big guns too. And she also gets more accurate the closer she gets, so I feel like Sinop is, and since ranked ranges, in my opinion, are shorter than random battle ranges, well, I think Sinop is going to be fairly good.
It's one of those things where I think you have to be really good at, if you're going to play Sinop and play it well, you have to be really good at baiting other battleships into shooting your belt armor and not your bow.
Yep, you also have to make sure you don't get flanked, which means the best place to go is 2 brothers in the middle.
Clearly that is the best place to go. So, all right, guys. Well, we have a new game mode coming called Rogue Wave. It will feature a ring of fire similar to those who for those who play games like Fortnite and PUBG, as well as 4 teams that all work against each other, instead of 2 teams that we have in the normal game. Special tier 10 destroyers will be available for use. And I really think that gameplay like this is really beneficial for the game. It kind of lets people fool around and try things in ships that they might not otherwise have, but it blends World of Warships with a very successful Battle Royale type games that we're seeing right now. I kind of also like that it's outside your normal stats so that Wargaming can test new ideas without alienating the player bases and their reputation and their statistics that they've built up over time.
I'm kind of disappointed with the map choice they had for the mode, though. Like, There's this certain other map that the positions remind me of that I think might have been nostalgic to some players.
What,
Which one are you
hotspot?
thinking?
Yep, Hotspot, the one map that we got almost every game when it was released, because I don't actually know why, but every game was Hotspot, 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 Hotspot. And
With the
we
cross?
had we had 5 cap circles on it, and you had cross spawns. Well, not just like every basically teams were split into 2, and you would spawn across from one another. So you would have, for example, if you go quadrants 1, 2, 3, 4, one team would be 1 and 3, the other one would be 2 and 4, which meant that if you were an aircraft carrier player, for example, if the enemy team found
You
your
were
planes,
host.
saw that you were top right, suddenly the entire enemy team from both sides starts converging on that side, and there was actually nowhere to run because, well, both directions are enemies. The only safe, in quotation marks, place to go would be the middle, where you would undoubtedly die. And that was always great fun, because back then CVs also attacked one another, meaning that the first thing CVs wanted to do was find the other CV. So that was some of the most interesting CV play I've had. I have to say that it's probably my lowest survival rate I have ever had in this game as an aircraft carrier, because it was quite rare that you would survive the first 10 minutes, regardless whether your team was winning or not, because, even if your team is much stronger than the opponent, they can never outfight 2 or, double the ships of the enemy. And I figured that map and that kind of setup would be quite appropriate for a 4-team map, but I suppose it's fine. Maybe they've learned something over the years.
Well, at least the teams aren't going to be allied to each other. I mean,
you sure about that? What if they say in chat, "Hey, team on the right, let's not attack one another"? Then what?
Then we're in a diplomacy situation. Do you ever play that board game?
Can't say I have.
It's really messed up. If you're really good at lying, you'll win.
Well,
anyway, I'm looking forward to playing around with it. I just think that it's cool that we're getting these additional PvE type things. Well, never necessarily PvE, but outside the normal random battle type of game modes,
Yeah, I think it's interesting to say the least. And I don't know, I've not been big or played much on any of this Battle Royale stuff. So I'll test it and, kind of see it from a newer perspective. It's funny, Arun, I have so many funny stories about old school Hotspot, but it would take way too long. But yeah, this will be interesting. It's all destroyers, right?
From what I can tell, yes, it's all destroyers, all the tier 10 destroyers, and they all have like special stats and stuff. And you don't start with stuff, so you have to like in the other battle royale games, you have to go like capture things to get consumables and stuff.
So what we really need is you start with nothing, not even guns, and then you go and pick up guns. And so
that would be interesting.
You start out as like I don't know, a Shimakaze, and you end up with Yamato guns.
Sounds like a certain anime that we've watched.
Yes, it is.
Alrighty, well, if you've been following the podcast Twitter, you know that I've been grinding away at ranked. And I wanted to talk a little bit about it, some of the things that have surprised me in the last week while I've been working on ranking up. First up, carriers are much more rare past rank 10 than I expected them to be. The majority of the games that I've played at rank 10 and higher have not had carriers in them. There's a few here and there, but even then, the effect of the carrier on the match has been much less than I expected it to be most of the time. Second, I'm learning to live with rental ships, and the days of multiple rental ships on my team seem to have diminished quite a bit since reaching rank 10. I don't know if that's going to go up a bit as the season progresses here, as we get closer to the end, but it does seem to be on the decline. And finally, the gameplay has by and large been better than I'm used to in a ranked season. I did play some carrier matches early on, but I've kind of defaulted back to playing my Yamato because I can do so much more damage in a loss that it's so difficult to lose my star. And so I end up playing my Yamato and just kind of going for as much damage and killing things on the enemy team as I can in the hopes that, if it does go wrong, I'll save my star.
Wait, rank 10? You mean rank 5 or?
No, rank 10.
No,
wait, I'm still.
No, okay, I'm confused now. What do you mean you worked yourself up to rank 10? Didn't you start at rank 10?
No, I was down at rank 15 when I started. I didn't do a whole lot of rank the last season.
What a pleb.
Right? I'm such a pleb. I'm such a noob.
Yeah, maybe that's why we had such a different experience at the start, or maybe that's why I have such a different experience from the many other people. Because, well, when I started, I think rank 10 already, or very very close to it, meaning that I would only play a few games and I would already be there. So maybe that's why I didn't run into so many rental ships and why it just wasn't much of a problem for me. That's a good point.
Yeah, no, it was interesting, and I was playing a lot of carrier early on, which was very odd for me. But once I started playing Yamato, I did carry once or twice, but most of the time I had a hard time because I have a hard time doing a lot of damage in those carriers. Like, I'm still learning how to use them properly.
I think everyone is, though, because anti-air is fairly powerful. The annoyance of carriers comes from when you can focus fire someone when somebody's out of position, rather than when, everybody works as a team somewhat, which tends to happen more and more the higher ranks you get.
Agreed. But the Yamato is just, especially with the legendary upgrade, it's so good. Nothing is safe for me shooting at it for the most part. So I don't know. I really like playing the Yamato in ranked because I can just rack up lots and lots of damage. Somebody's going to give me a shot. I did run into Kami in a match yesterday though, and he was playing Kremlin, which if I wasn't such a big Yamato player and I wasn't so comfortable with it, I honestly think Kremlin might be my second choice for this ranked season.
Not Conqueror? Don't you like to conquer?
No, it's not really my thing. But I mean, everyone, you were big on Kremlin. Would you play Kremlin over Yamato in this ranked season?
Probably. I think I actually like Conqueror the most, like I've said before, but I think my second choice would also be Kremlin. In fact, when I played ranked, I was constantly tempted to just free XP Kremlin. In fact, if I probably had Kremlin unlocked, which I can do at any moment with free XP because I have so much of it, but I just was like, nah, we're gonna get her the traditional way, although I suspect that I'm eventually just gonna free XP her anyway. However, I think if I had her available, I probably would have played her at least a few times because she just seems so dominant. Especially, like I mentioned earlier, the slow or the smaller ranges that you get into and in ranked, I think Kremlin, because of that, does incredibly well. And the fact that there are fewer players, meaning that you're less likely to be flanked. And so I think Kremlin is very, very, very good in ranked right now. Oh, and she also has a decent anti-air suit, meaning that even if there are CVs, you're gonna be somewhat okay.
Kind of curious.
No, go on.
Kind of curious to see how the ship is doing on the CIS servers.
Well, yeah, it's probably winning games.
It's probably what 3/4 of, when you get those all heavy metal matches where it's all battleships.
I will say that there have been a lot of Conquerors, Arun. Like, I've seen a lot of people playing Conqueror, and they are kind of a pain in the ass to deal with because they just zombie heal.
And the worst part of them are the ones with the legendary, because if they sit at long range, they have a rudder that's comparable or even better than some cruisers, which is always rather funny. You see Conqueror just finished a turn, and suddenly she's already in a full turn again before her shells get like halfway there.
It's true. And she's going to just rain fire on you. She doesn't care about penetration. Now, the reason that I've been playing Yamato over Kremlin, though, Arun, is the overmatch. Because I've been finding there are a lot of times that I need that overmatch to shoot through people's bows. And Kremlin can't do that.
So I opened the stats on the wows-numbers.com website, and the most popular battleship on the CIS server, at least according to this, is still Yamato in ranked at 8.8%. You'll never guess who's number 2, by the way. Shimakaze.
You're kidding me.
Nope. And you're actually not gonna guess who's number. Where are all the Soviet ships? Okay, Yamato, Shimakaze, Des Moines, Montana, Kurfürst, Republik, Zao, Stalingrad. What? I guess maybe there just hasn't been enough time.
Maybe they don't have enough free XP.
Well, I mean, the majority of the player base probably hasn't got her, but the best performing ones are Burgony, Stalingrad, and then Kremlin, so perhaps Kremlin is warranted there.
Burgon is a French ship, by the way.
Yes, I know, but still, I meant best performing out of all of them, like all of the ships. And they're almost all the top 3 are the same win rate. That's kind of incredible, though.
Yeah, I would have expected a lot more Kremlin games. Alrighty, well, next up we have 3 new test ship iterations that we've had before. So first up, Yoshino, which got access to the 12-kilometer torpedoes and got a reload reduction for its main guns. I guess I don't have a lot to say here, as I already thought Yoshino was in a great spot, and I didn't think that she really needed these changes. In particular, didn't even need the reload change. So after our big discussion a few weeks ago about the 12-kilometer torps on Yoshino, I found that I generally prefer the 20-kilometer torps for their flexibility and the long-range surprise and the ability to stealth torp. Where are you guys? We had that big discussion. Where are you guys at with this current version of Yoshino? Excuse me. Did you use the 12-kilometer torps? Did you keep the 20s? Where are you at?
Didn't you mean the lulls with the 20-kilometer torps? Because that's what it is. It's just for the lulls.
I think there just aren't enough torpedoes in the 20-kilometer part. Really, what should happen is that you fire the torpedoes, and then after every 5 kilometers, the torpedoes multiply.
Right. But seriously, though, I guess, where are you at with Yoshino? I thought that the first iteration that we got was almost perfectly balanced. And then they buffed her, which I didn't really think that she needed.
I don't know about perfectly balanced. Like, I don't have any counterindications. It's just that I probably get these gut feelings wrong sometimes, but I do. But she didn't feel too strong, but she also didn't feel too weak, and she felt interesting enough. I also like the 20-kilometer torpedoes more than the 12s, because the 12s it felt too much like Zhao, but I think the ship just doesn't fulfill quite the same role as Zhao does, particularly because your concealment isn't as great, and you are much, 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 much bigger. So you're much more likely to get hit than like the Zhao.
I swear to God, it's almost twice the size of Zhao.
Yeah, and when you do get hit, you're at least, maybe this is like bias talking, but I think you're less likely to bounce those shells. And so you end up not doing the same risky maneuvers you are with the Zhao, where you go close and stealth torp and whatnot. Well, you can't stealth torp anyway, but, get close and torpedo. Whereas with 20-kilometer torpedoes, you're like, well, if I can shoot that guy, I can probably torpedo him. Even if he, is somewhat out of range right now, maybe he'll sail closer, because it takes quite a while for the torpedoes to get there.
I have to be very careful about those damn things, because I swear I'm more likely to torp my own team than the enemy team sometimes.
Well, they deserve it for getting in the way of the glorious torpedoes.
Yeah, I completely agree. You have to be so careful. There's so many times I'm like doing multiple 360s with the camera and like plotting all my teammates like courses and trajectories, and like, is there a chance that they might? I better not launch these torps.
It's like that scene from Hangover with all the figures going in the guy's head before he walks down to play blackjack. Alrighty, well, Benham is back, and this time we have 10.5-kilometer torpedoes, and it kind of makes all the difference in the world, in my opinion. It's still really hard to get all of her torpedoes off on both sides, but the torp reload is really fantastic, and she definitely fits as a torpedo boat destroyer for the USN players. My only qualm about her, and like Summers that we talked about last week, is that they're almost better at torpedo boating than the IJN DDs.
Benham? Does she come with bacon?
Benham, whatever you want to call it.
Well, go on, Vanessa.
I think it's a great ship, and it's in a good position. No, I don't think it is better than the IGN torping. Yeah, they might be able to throw out a good consistent volume of torpedoes, but remember, the USN, as the Russians kind of look at it, is supposed to be kind of a well-balanced, good but not great at everything. And many IGN destroyer players can be fitted with the torpedo reload booster and just throw out a sheer wall of torpedoes, when push comes to shove. And so, I mean, yeah, it's a nice destroyer, but it's not indicative of the entire USN destroyer line. And same thing with Summers. It's good, but I mean, you can kind of look at some of the other, the Germans can really throw out torpedoes rather quickly, but not the effectiveness of those torpedoes isn't always the same as IGN's torpedoes.
Well, I mean, I actually think she might be better at torpedoing than the IGN destroyers, but she's a tier 9 DD, and to be honest, she kinda needs it. Because let's compare her to Yugumo, the tier 9 Japanese destroyer, the one that's pretty good, but not as good as Kitakaze. Yugumo has 1000 HP on the Benham. The Benham has 16 torpedoes that are 10.5 kilometers, sorry. Yugumo is 12 kilometers. Yugumo's torps deal 24,000 damage. Benham's deal 15,000 damage. That's fine. The Benham has more torpedoes. Yugumo only has 8 of them, right? It's 2x4. Yep. And Benham has 16, but, 8 on one side. Now, when you compare these two in terms of torpedoes, you're like, well, Yugumo has some advantages, Benham has others. Maybe it's somewhat of a wash, but you would expect Benham to actually be better. Why? Because Yugumo can outfight Benham. She has 1000 HP on the Yugumo has 1000 HP on the Benham. She also gets slightly more DPM than Benham. And Japanese Japanese DD guns the arcs are much better, so it's easier to land shells from moderate ranges than it is for something like Benham. Like, if a destroyer is beyond, like, say, 6, 7, 8 kilometers, you're kind of unlikely to hit the DD with USN DD guns, in my opinion. Like, sure, you might hit, but, you won't hit, like, many shells. Whereas Yugumo at 6 kilometers has no problem hitting shells. And the alpha on them is also very, very good, which is quite useful at times. So I would say that Benham kind of has to be able to be at least as good as Yugumo in a gunfight because, as a torpedo boat because, Yugumo is better than her at guns already. So if she didn't even have torpedoes going for her, compared to Yugumo, maybe she wouldn't be good enough because Benham is also going to lose the concealment fight by a good, 400 or 500 meters. So I think Benham is, even if she is better as a torpedo boat, I think it's just fine that she is that way.
So the crazy thing is, the thing about this that gets a little crazy when you start really digging into Benham versus Yugumo. Yugumo gets the torpedo reload booster that Vanessa talks about, and it's really, really good because of just how concealable Yugumo is. So it can toss out 16 torpedoes every 2 minutes or 2 or 3 minutes or whatever it is on that reload. And those torpedoes hurt a lot. But she has to give up her smoke generator to do it. Whereas Benham's torpedoes don't hurt as bad, and she has to turn around to fire off all of her torpedoes, but she can always do that. And they're only like a 60-something second reload when you are fully spec'd out for it. I mean, Benham can throw out a lot of torpedoes, and it can do it while it's sitting in its own smoke, which Yugumo can't. Now, the other point you made about the gunboat is really interesting, Aaron, because so many Yugumo players are conditioned never to fire them. And there's this, hesitancy that they don't use them, even though, and maybe they don't even realize just how good they are. The only downside is, and I agree that the Yugumo guns have a higher DPM and are easier to use. The problem is that their traverse sucks. I mean, it's not as bad as it used to be, but getting all your guns on target is a lot harder in Yugumo than it is in Benham.
That's true. That's very, very true. And that is one of the downsides of playing Japanese destroyers. You're always wondering, should I take expert marksman on a ship like this? Because expert marksman on these small DD guns is a massive buff. And so if you take that skill,
do you have the points for it?
It's not an issue. Yeah, exactly. That's always the question. We had Strefs on some time ago, right? A few weeks ago. He loves Yugumo. Like, he thinks Yugumo is probably one of the best ships in the game or something like that, especially at tier 9, because she's a good gunboat, she has good torpedoes, she has good concealment, so she can fulfill many, many roles at the same time, which is really, really nice. Although I guess right now you have some issues with carriers anyway, so regardless whether Benham or Yugumo, you're gonna suffer slightly.
But even still, like that, the ability that Benham has to use all those torpedoes and sit in the smoke for the carriers, it's not nothing.
Well, can she actually use all the torpedoes while sitting in a smoke?
Isn't
that going to take a long time to turn around in just one smoke screen?
it depends on how advantageously you lay the smokescreen. But I mean, I take your point. I'm just saying, like, it has, like, sometimes it feels like Benham has more tools.
Benham needs a longer smokescreen so she can make a circle.
That would be really, really funny, actually. So I guess, Vanessa, would you rather play Benham or would you rather play Yugumo?
Well, I was just kind of thinking, I've always loved Yugumo, and I think it's an outstanding ship. I would agree. Arun, talking about Streps, thinking it's one of his favorite destroyers in the game, or ships in the game, and yeah, I think it is an outstanding ship. The only problem is the Fletcher is in the same tier, and I just love that ship so much that it's hard for me to play Yugumo because of that ship. And Benham is, it's a fun ship, and it has a lot of USN tools, which I like to bring into a match. I take the AA, I don't take the speed boost. And, I would rather have a little bit of, this tool, that tool, to kind of address whatever kind of situation comes up and, kind of go from there. So for me, I would probably choose Benham over Yugumo. But honestly, I think Yugumo is probably a better ship. Stats wise, it seems like it's probably the better ship to take. I think if I were to say which ship I would probably be more comfortable in, I'd probably be more comfortable in Yugumo. But I really like the playstyle and the challenge of USN destroyers. So I've always just kind of gravitated towards that because it fits my style. It fits how, I like to play the game, and how, especially when you have caps, I just feel really confident when trying to tape caps, fight over caps, and be an anti-destroyer in USN destroyers.
Well, we'll see where Benham ends up, because I still don't know that it's going to end up the way she is right now in her final iteration. So honestly, I don't even know if Slava got nerfed. It doesn't feel like it. She is such a devastating strike monster against cruisers. Like, getting 3, 4, 5 citadels is not uncommon with this thing. I guess I found her guns to have become a lot more lacking against other battleships. So maybe that's what they changed with the corrupt values and whatnot. But man, if you want to kill a cruiser, Slava is the way to do it. So, and she's still really tough to kill, particularly at the ranges that she likes to stay at. Did Slava change to you guys at all, or is she just as good as she was before the last iteration?
I haven't touched this ship because here's the thing. I know Arun's going to get all technical and everything, and the ship is named Victory, or at least when we were testing it as Pobeda, it means victory, like you just win. And until they pretty much, I don't think this ship should be released, because I don't like the play style that it's going to be. You sit in the back, you zip around, and you snipe with a battleship. You're taking a battleship slot and you're zipping around the rear of the field, and you are accurately raining shells down on people and annihilating them. And there's really not much, unless you have carriers constantly spawning them and being able to shoot at them and, focus them. This ship is ridiculous. And I don't think something like this, taking up a battleship slot with the guns that it has, should be in the game.
I agree. It should take a cruiser slot instead. Would be much better. Okay. By the way, Slava means glory, so not victory.
Well, we were testing it
Pobeda.
previous as Pobeda, which means victory.
Yeah.
So I just keep calling it that because that's what it is.
Slava means glory. Anyway, she obviously did get nerfed. I mean, her survivability was cut. It's just that she didn't really need those tools. One of my first matches of her, especially on stream, was the match starts. There's an enemy, I think Kitakaze or Harugumo, that's coming in at around 18 kilometers. Destroyers get spotted and stuff. And she had taken like a good 10k damage already by some other stuff that she met up with and was running away. And I took a shot at her from 18 kilometers. And I think I did like 10 or 12 or 15,000 damage from 18 kilometers away in my like first salvo on that DD. And that kind of cemented my opinion of her because that was so early on. She's just incredible at hitting a target and dealing massive amounts of damage. Yes, she's not gonna like... If a Yamato sits head on to her from 20 kilometers away, sure, she's not gonna hit her for massive amounts of damage. But then again, neither is that Yamato gonna do all that much from that kind of range anyway, or that kind of position, so you'll just pick another target. Something that's closer, something that's more important to kill right now. And I think Slava as a ship for something like that is amazing, and cutting her survivability by making her have fewer heals and all these things, it nerfs her, but those aren't things that when you played her correctly were coming into play that much anyway. It's kind of like, I don't know, what would you say? It's kind of like when you nerf the fire duration on CVs to make it normal again. Sure, it's technically a nerf to CVs, but what kind of real-world impact will it actually have? Almost none, because a fire on a CV doesn't do much, because it's, CVs don't get hit that often, and they're not going to go down, and it's going to be rare that these fires are going to make a big difference. And as a result of that, I think Slava is the same way. The fewer heals just aren't going to have a big impact because you play her at range.
So, back to what Vanessa said, she was very clear that she does not think that Slava should be released. And I'm leaning that way, but I'm not quite in that camp yet. Do you think we should have Slava, or do you think they should just trash the whole thing?
Well, I think we should have her, but maybe have her as a conditional of some kind where... I don't know, it's not a premium ship. I would like to see stats, I would like to see how the ship measures up, but I would also like Wargaming to have the ability to nerf her if they do release her. And I think that's kind of a problem right now.
She's supposed to be a split tech tree ship, from what I understand.
Yeah, I guess in that case, sure, that's fine. Because I think that she might bring problems, but it might also be that while she's a strong ship at what she does, she might not end up having as big of an impact as we think she does, because... well, maybe most players won't play her correctly, or maybe it's that players will find a way to exploit her, which they haven't right now because they just don't run into that many Slavas. So, it's kind of difficult to learn to play against something if you only see her once in a blue moon.
See, ultimately, I think the biggest problem with this ship, and for Wargaming trying to balance it, is the fact that the servers play differently. The NA server play is vastly different than the CIS servers, and the feedback that they've been getting on the ship is vastly different between the different servers. So, obviously we don't see the stats and the numbers, but if I were a developer, I would see this as a nightmare to try and balance it, because, that on the NA, it's very... you can have ships that just sit back and don't charge in. CIS, they'll all ball up and go at each other in close range fight, which this ship is not meant for. So, what they're seeing with the ship and how to use it is night and day difference between the servers.
It's okay, the Battle Royale mode will make everyone ball up and rush.
But you only have destroyers in that, so... All right, guys. Well,
details.
It's been another good week. So we had no questions of the week that were submitted this week. So if you guys do have questions for us next week, please go ahead and submit those on the podcast forum hub, and we will get to answer your questions as you have them. Vanessa, Arun, did you guys have anything else to add for this week?
We forgot to talk about Hill.
We did, but we're kind of out of time. So do you mind if we hold that one over for next week?
Sure, I guess.
I know it's one of your favorite ships. I'm sorry. I actually hate the damn thing. I can't stand it.
It's not so much that it's a favorite ship, but it is interesting.
Aaron, you have anything to add?
No.
Alrighty. Well, that's it for this week, folks. Don't forget to tune in next week and you'll hear about Hill. And we do have that spot on the NA forums just for the Warships Podcast. Be sure to check out that for news and where to ask questions of the week. The link for that is in the episode description. And I did want to thank Arun for putting together the links so that we're actually able to get links and they work, that you can click on the link and then go to that part of the podcast for each subject. So I do appreciate you getting that working for us a couple weeks ago, Arun. One other thing is Georgia was released this morning, so you can go pick her up for, I believe, free XP or coal or something. So Georgia is out there. You can try that ship out. We have here at the podcast have had a little bit of a disagreement about whether or not that ship's any good, but you guys can try it out for yourselves. As always, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Warships Podcast and Twitter at Warships Podcast for updates between episodes. Don't forget to check out Arun on YouTube and Twitch as well. We, of course, want to thank our amazing Patreon backers. If you're interested in supporting us, please consider becoming a backer yourself. Backers are what make the podcast possible, as we could not make this podcast without you guys. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.